Test, test. 1, 2, 3. All right, I think we're ready to go. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Lili Kazemi, and this is DAOFitlive, a channel where we talk all things fitness for busy professionals who don't have the time to figure it out. If you're new to the channel or just stopping by, welcome. And if you're coming back, welcome back. As always, thank you for your support. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Today, we are going to talk about NEAT. And I'm not talking about, a Marie Kondo seminar on how to tidy up. I am talking about an acronym. And as you folks who are in business know, we have a lot of acronyms. But this is a good kind of acronym because as you will learn, NEAT is going to save you a lot of unnecessary time wasted on exercise and worrying about how to make time to exercise. Because let's face it, that's just not time a lot of us have right now, especially those of us who have returned to the office and our lives have gotten redisrupted. In fact, I was just talking with some of you on LinkedIn about the fact that returning to the office now takes away the 2 extra hours that you had before to exercise a day. But this doesn't mean you still can't be on the path or continue where you are in your progress of getting fit. In fact, there's even better news. So what we're going to review today is what NEAT is and how it compares to exercise in terms of the utility in weight loss and fitness. And then finally, we're going to learn ways that you can add NEAT to your routine. And that's not going to be hard because you've already probably done various activities of NEAT all day long, especially if it's 4 p.m. on the East Coast. Even if you're on the West Coast, you've already done lots of NEAT. So it's just a matter of making it a little bit more purposeful and staying more active throughout the day as opposed to succumbing to what we call sedentary athlete syndrome. And I'm going to get into what that is too. So let's start at the top. What is NEAT? All right, I'm going to have slides, but I really just wanted to spell this out for everybody and having an excuse to make a glittery poster. I just had to. So NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And I know that sounds all sciencey, but think about, thermogenesis, most of you can probably common sense figure out that refers to burning energy, okay? So non-exercise activity thermogenesis is basically whatever activity you're doing besides sleeping and besides intentional exercising. So what people think of as the conventional notion of exercise, like going for a run, going to the gym, getting on the Peloton, those things fall outside of NEAT. And NEAT is just those activities that you do throughout the day. We'll get into some more specific examples of them. But for now, I think it's also important to understand where NEAT and what exercise is called in exercise science, exercise activity thermogenesis, or EAT. So just look at that. That is what exercise is, exercise activity thermogenesis. How do they fit into the fitness equation, right? So you may remember from my previous webinars, which I will link in the description. You can go to my YouTube channel to check them out. But you may remember we talked about the Chico equation. So I'm quickly just going to show you some slides, and hopefully you guys will all be able to see this. I think we're good. I'm getting better and better at the technology every time. So thanks everyone for bearing with me. I don't have a team or anything. It's just a little engine that could here. So the basic equation, as we went through before, is Chico, okay? Calories in versus calories out. That's the energy equation. And the idea is if you want to lose weight, to expend more calories out. So many people think, and it's not really, it's a belief that's perpetuated by the industry in terms of elevating exercise as the most critical lever to weight loss in terms of calories out. And NEAT, in terms of staying active, is often overlooked and taken for granted. But I hope by the end of this, I'm going to convince you why you should actually look at this the other way around. All right, so we started with Chico, okay? And then we're going to go to the energy equation in this bar graph. So the CHO side of the equation, the calories out, is identified by total daily energy expenditure, TDEE. All right. So 70% of that equation is something you can do hardly anything about. It's your RMR, your resting metabolic rate, although you can raise this in various ways, including through resistance training, which I definitely hope to cover in another one of my episodes. So that's 70%. Let's leave that to the side, all right? So some simple math, we got 30% left. What is that other 30%? So that is composed of NEAT. It is composed of the thermic effect of food, which basically means the calories that your body expends in digesting food. And we'll cover this a little bit in this episode. I'd like to do another more extensive one because this is also often an overlooked way to burn calories. And then there's also eat, and that's sort of what the industry focuses on. It focuses on exercise and, sweating off the calories. I mean, I don't know if you ever go to fitness classes where you hear the instructor say, all right, everybody, work really hard so you can go to happy hour and have 2 margaritas tonight. I mean, this perpetuates the belief, and it is scientifically proven not to be a true one, that exercise burns the most calories in terms of activity. But if you look at this graph, you will see that, so we cover that we've got the BMR being the bulk, but look at where NEAT is. So that's about 15 to 20% of this other 30%. And even chewing and digesting your food is more than the 5% left. Approximately 5% to 10% is eat or exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, in the description, I've actually already gone through and linked this. A lot of my research for this webinar is linked in the description. So there have been numerous articles published, but the one that I really latched onto a few years ago is an article by Vox magazine, which titled "Why You Shouldn't Rely on Exercise to Lose Weight, Explained with 60 plus Studies." And so the basic thesis of this article, through the research it did, was that you sort of can only max out at a certain percentage of burning calories. And that's for one main reason, which is it has to do with our human being evolutionary survivor skills, and has to do with metabolic adaptation. So the article gives an example, and I will loosely paraphrase that. But basically, say, a 200-pound man embarks on a weight loss journey, which is medically, advocated for him. So he decides that, as part of that journey, he's going to run for 60 minutes a day. And so at first, he'll likely find success if all things else are equal. If, even if he doesn't decrease his calorie intake significantly, this amount of exercise per day, for example, could result in a 5-pound weight loss in the first few weeks. But here's the rub of it. Your body adapts to burning a certain amount of calories. So it's actually, after a certain period of time, going to take more work by your body to earn this, to burn the same amount of calories. So if this isn't making sense to you, think of it like this. Think of it in terms of economics, of inflation, okay? So when I was in high school, I used to be able to go to the mall with my friends with $20 and be able to afford to go to the food court and also a store and shop and, buy a top or something. That was 20, going to the mall with $20 was like, I was rich. But nowadays, I mean, $20 will hardly buy you anything, even, a fast food meal, perhaps, but definitely not any significant, quality shopping can be done with that amount of money. So think of it. So basically, it's like the same amount of exercise won't go as far anymore because over time your body adapts to that. And that's what that box study effectively explains. So now that we sort of understand more of the equation of, this is why there's basically a cap for the calories that you burn through exercise. Let's examine another reason why exercise, I don't want to say backfire, but I do want to say why the perception of exercise as a key lever can also lead to unintended consequences. So we've already covered point number 1. Now, here's another point. So most of us have a Fitbit. I actually don't. I've had several, but I don't wear a Fitbit anymore. And this is one of the reasons why. It's because studies supported by university like Stanford show that even the most accurate smartwatches or Fitbits are off by 27% in terms of calorie burn, and even off by as much as 93%. So when you look at it and you think, wow, I burned, 1,500 calories on the Peloton just now, just think that may not be as likely to be accurate. The same goes for the machines at the gym where they estimate how many calories you burn. Even if you do enter your weight and the accuracy of that, they're often highly inaccurate. And even without any tangible numbers, a lot of us just by nature, because, exercise, it's exertion. And we will be at the end of an exercise session, dripping sweat, having our heart rate go up, feeling tired and think, wow, I must have just earned the right to eat like this, big pizza. And, our bodies just naturally overestimate the number of calories that we burn. So this leads to what is called compensatory behavior. And that includes eating to restore the perceived calorie expenditure. And the flip side of that is moving less throughout the day. So let me give you some examples of that. So say that, you do this big workout in the morning, and you feel like, all right, like I've checked the box, I've done my workout. Now, let's go to your work day. Let's go to a work day if you're going to the office. So if you're going to the office, perhaps as a result of having had this big workout, you think, all right, well, maybe I can take an Uber, take the subway instead of walking that, the distance, or once you get there, forego taking the stairs. It's these little things that our minds tell us that we've quote unquote earned in terms of compensatory behavior, when in reality, doing all those other little movements constitutes neat and cumulatively can have more benefit than the exertion that you expend through exercise. So there's actually a very technical term for this that my dog child Galaxy over here is demonstrating, which is the sedentary athlete condition. And this does actually happen to athletes, but it also, it happens to regular, quote, regular people like us. It's a phenomenon that happens because of these compensatory behaviors associated with exercise. And I can assure you that I have fallen victim to this. So this is a bit of a personal story. And I think that telling a personal story will help you understand where I'm coming from, because I started this channel and I started the associated blog not because I think, I know everything and I want to spread my knowledge. No, it's because I have made a lot of mistakes. I have done so many things wrong. And so part of my effort here is to save a lot of you from doing these things and wasting time and kind of going through the pain that I did. And So let me describe to you what happened here. So on the left, so this was, perhaps you may not be able to see the caption, but this was me in 2018, and I was exercising. I mean, I'll say this about exercise and myself. I'm definitely not advocating to not exercise because I love exercise. I mean, I don't just like exercise, I love like exercise. And I couldn't imagine not doing it. But I had fallen into this, rabbit hole of thinking that if I exercised for, so many hours a week and did really challenging workouts, that I was essentially able, to not have to count calories or really watch my diet. And effectively, I wasn't working out and then going to McDonald's or eating junky food. In fact, I was eating a lot of healthy food. The problem is that I was eating too much of it, too many calories, and also engaging in the compensatory behaviors that we discussed on the last slide, which was, for example, I would go running for, 6 miles in the morning before I went to work, would go and bypass the steps. And day after day, as I was doing this, I was putting chronic stress on my body, which was causing a lot of inflammation, which was causing a lot of fatigue. So there were days where I would just get to the office and sort of like sink into the chair, and I just wouldn't be able to, lifting the mouse seemed a lot of effort. I was just exhausted. And so I really, in the picture on the left, you might say, well, you looked fine. Yeah, I think I looked fine also, but I didn't feel fine. And I felt very betrayed because as I was putting more and more effort in, the scale was going up, and I was in denial about it. And then I finally, I went to the doctor's office, I got on the scale, and I couldn't believe what the number said. I just burst into tears. Like, I felt like I had been doing everything right, and I just didn't understand what was happening. So through this learning experience, though, I actually ended up consulting with a dietitian, and, she explained a lot of this to me, and she explained the chronic stress on my body was making me release cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which in too big of a quantity can actually have an opposite effect, cause the storage of fat, especially for women, belly fat. And that's simply that I wasn't even in touch with my body's natural hunger signals to even realize, when I was truly hungry, when I really needed to eat, because I just felt like I needed to eat all the time. I was hungry all the time. So eventually, we worked together, and she had me severely, reduce my amount of exercise. And so by 2021, I had changed my program to actually eating more calories than I thought I was eating. Now, whether this was actually how many calories I was eating, I increased my fat intake, I increased my calorie intake, but I also reduced the amount of exercise I was doing to a total of 4 hours a week. And I follow a 4-3-2-1 formula that I'm looking forward to talking to you about in another episode. But essentially, I do strength training 4 times a week. And I do a combination of high intensity and low intensity cardio 3 times a week. Twice a week, I do precision training, which is defined as yoga or Pilates or bar, something that's really more about body weight. And then I rest 1 day a week. And obviously, those numbers add up to more than seven. But the way that I stagger it is such that I have 1 to 2 days of complete rest. So by the time I had implemented this, and a few years later, and this didn't happen overnight. You see, it's 2018 and 2021. So I had to also be patient and let this happen gradually, these changes. But eventually I got to a place where I felt, it's not even so much about the way I looked on the outside it was like I felt, energized again. And I felt like I was able to be, very active and energetic through the day. And not purposefully, but naturally, I increased my amount of neat activity. So even on days where I wasn't working out, I was still really energetic and active. And I really liked that feeling because I could feel that, my body was engaging. And I wasn't just, for example, on the weekend, going to a double soul cycle class in the morning and then paralyzed for the rest of the day. So that's my story. If you relate to it at all, great. I'll talk to you and hear your story. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. A lot of you have my direct information, but I definitely want to hear where you're coming from with this and if you've had a similar experience. Okay, so let's get to neat. All right, so I kind of didn't do a great job of bearing the lead, but I didn't really want to. I wanted to give you an idea of what neat was before we gave some examples. But basically, as I said earlier, it's all the activity you do that isn't intentional exercise or sleeping. So it's all this like, it's sort of like spontaneous movement throughout the day. Even as I'm like moving my hands, like I think I have like a little bit of a Italian gene. I talk with my hands, but this is, this is actually neat. Like any kind of movement that you do, changing posture, stair climbing, spontaneous muscle contractions, fidgeting, chewing, cleaning, and other activities of daily living. So all of these activities are neat. So let me give some more examples. Brushing your teeth, which hopefully you've done that today. Walking also from point A to point B. That's neat. If you're walking on a treadmill just to get exercise, that's more eat. But if you're walking to work or walking to meet your friend for coffee or, walking to do errands, that is more neat. Same with going up the stairs to get to your apartment or your office. And fidgeting, let me talk about that for a minute because, fidgeting normally has a negative connotation like, oh, that child in school, oh, they just fidget so much and the teachers don't like that, etc. But, if you have a child like that or you were the child, like I've got some good news. That's actually a good thing. It's a good thing to constantly, sort of move when you're sitting. You don't have to wiggle around in a really obvious way, but just moving around a little bit as you're sitting is great for neat. So these are some examples of what it is, but we can also talk about how you can get more of it. All right, so how can you specifically get more neat? So walking, okay? Walking as a commute. So to the extent you live in an urban sprawl, definitely especially if you've returned to the office, walk to the office. I live about 35 minutes away from my office, but I'll get on my backpack and my, sneakers, the nice sneakers, but I'll have my shoes in the bag and I'll walk. And, this is not only great for burning calories, it's also great for a meditation. It really helps me clear my head in the morning and kind of feel revved up and energized as to what I want to prioritize for the day. And then in the evening when I walk home, it helps me clear my head. And so even if you can't, you're short on time or the weather is X, Y, and Z, try Ubering part of the way and walking, or taking the subway, or we call it in DC, the metro. Just try doing a combination of public transport and walking at first. If you don't want to walk all the way, if you do drive, obviously some of us, do have to drive, but the same concept of taking the stairs, for example, could apply. So instead of driving and then taking the elevator and then, take the stairs, or if, there isn't an accessible stairway, take a few, come out of the garage and take a few walks around the block, or go and get your cup of coffee instead of bringing it from home. So then you have some way of building in some activity. So a lot of us are still hybrid or remote. So the other thing I like to call it's called Zoom walking, and I've actually linked my video about this in the description. But we all have, lots of calls throughout the day, right? And a lot of them are on platforms like Google Meets, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, probably missing a couple, WebEx. But all of these have apps you can download on your smartphone, and you can actually join on the phone, which is great because this way you can participate in the conversation, you can listen. And there's definitely in the video, I go through like, here's how to make, sound judgment calls about when it's appropriate to join from your mobile and walk versus you should be face to face in front of the camera. So I know that can be, a hot topic of debate, but there are definitely lots of occasions, especially where you're not an active participant. If there's like, 200 people on the call, if it's a training, where it's perfectly okay. And for example, for myself, if I'm catching up with a colleague that's a peer that we have a good rapport, sometimes I'll say, hey, reach out 15 minutes before and say, hey, I would really like to take a walk and talk to you. Do you mind if just I call you on my cell phone? And 9 times out of the 10, the other person will say, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that too. So we walk, we have a conversation, we both feel good. That leads me to my next point, which is do the late Steve Jobs style of meeting. So Steve Jobs was famous for having walking meetings. And there's a phenomenon to this where I did some research, and actually walking with other people helps build a rapport, more so than sitting face to face, even because if you've noticed when you walk with someone and you're sort of like talking to them side by side, you're naturally sort of falling more in lockstep and syncing your bodies together. And that forms more of a human connection. So the former President Barack Obama also was known for doing this. So another one is, these are very little things, but think of it like microtransactions. They add up. Another one is, read the actual newspaper. I've got my newspaper right here. No spoiler alert for anybody, but because it's yesterday's newspaper. But for example, if you are, perhaps I should just like disable the slide so you can see what I'm doing. So like if you're like reading the newspaper, you're flipping, right? You're not just like scrolling on a mouse. You're holding it up. If you hold up a newspaper long enough, like I can feel my biceps and my lats engage, and same goes with magazines and physical books. There's there's a time and a place for throwbacks, and I think that neat is definitely one of those. And so let's get back to the list though, because we're almost out of time, but I am almost done. Okay, so chewing. So I was a little tongue in cheek here, but chewing actually does burn at least 10 extra calories per meal. Chewing gum actually burns 11 calories per hour. So that ties into the thermic effect of food that I mentioned. And so part of digestion is chewing. And so to the extent that you eat foods that have a high thermic effect, especially ones that are high in protein, and you chew. And so in this case, it would be, instead of having a smoothie, eat the protein, eat the fruit. And so you capitalize on the chewing and the thermic effect of food. Take advantage of your dog. I certainly do. I think there were a lot of memes. Like my dog is going for a walk again. Yes. But those walks, those short walks throughout the day, with your kids, your dog, your significant other, just to, take a break are great. Taking small breaks throughout the day and stretching your legs. I know that if you're popping by here and you're a student, or you have, kids that are students, it's exam season right now. It's super stressful. And, I definitely send my best wishes to you while you're studying, but do remember to stand up and take some breaks and walk. It'll do much better for you. And I can just tell you a secret as a former student that if you don't know it by now, you won't know it, but you will do so much better for yourself by just taking self-care and making sure that you're well rested for the day. So mom's speech is over. But that goes for work too, those of us, because sometimes we just get so embroiled in something and think we can't turn ourselves away, when in fact, taking a break and walking and then coming back can help sort of diffuse any stress you may have from a situation. And a lot of times, if you walk away from something and come back 10 minutes later, it's kind of like the situation's already resolved, which is always nice. And so, last thing I'll cover is couple more things is chores. So washing dishes, taking out the trash. As you can see, the queen in this still from the video from the Swiffer commercial. I try to replicate this on the channel. I did a really poor job of it because she's just awesome. But the point is, like, cleaning up, vacuuming, not with a, automatic vacuumer that roams around, but with a real vacuum cleaner, with a real sort of like mop. You don't have to become like a full-on like 50s housewife, but it definitely is a good thing to do physical chores, and you may be more motivated to do so if like this is a form of neat. Listen to some music while you're doing it, make it fun. Even activities like packing, for example. I'm about to go on a trip and I have a lot of packing to do, and I just realized that in between washing clothes and folding clothes and all those other things you got to do to get ready for a trip, like this is a lot of activity, and by the end of it, it's exhausting. So the day of my trip, I don't consider it necessary to work out because I will have run around so much in between that and the airport. That is a lot of neat right there. Same thing with turning the lights off. What I mean is, it's great that we have smart devices that do everything for us, but maybe sometimes consider adjusting the thermostat or the lights yourself, because just having a reason to just get up and walk and do something is good. Same with drinking a lot of water. Drinking a lot of water is something that you should be doing anyway, but it's really good for you to do because it necessitates getting up, for obvious reasons, and also to refill your bottle. So you're constantly just getting up and coming back. So all of those things build more neat into your day, and over time you'll find that the more that you stay active, the easier it is to maintain. In fact, one of the articles is actually that I linked in the description is an NIH study where they did the study in China of adolescents and tracked how well they were able to maintain exercise versus NEAT over time. And NEAT definitely won out. So like a lot of us, it's very cyclical, right? It's like we have phases where we can maintain like a very consistent exercise program. Then we have phases where work happens, life happens, travel happens, and we fall off the beam. But the good news is that this isn't the end all be all. There are so many other things that influence your overall health. So definitely strive to get purposeful physical activity, but know that there are so many other ways that you can stay active throughout the day. And that, of course, your diet is really the core of what you need to focus on to meet your fitness goals. And so the more you have that lens and place less of a, I guess I want to say, deification of exercise as the most important thing. I think it's kind of like the truth shall set you free here. Like I feel a lot more happy and free now that not only I know this information, but I've also see it come to life. And now I just embrace joyful movement. I do the things that I want to do because I love doing them. And so whatever you enjoy doing in terms of working out, like don't feel like it has to be running for, an hour because that's what you need to do to burn the maximum amount of calories. You can have a lot of success with a lot of different smaller transactions throughout the day and still get to where you want to be and still do the things you want to do. So with that, I have gone a few minutes over, but I definitely wanted to cover everything. And I wanted to thank you all again for your support and say, I just really encourage your feedback. I have in mind maybe some things I want to cover on my next DAOFitlive. But if you have ideas or something that you want to see, please reach out to me. Best way is on LinkedIn through LinkedIn messaging, and you can find that information on the homepage. And you can also please subscribe to this page if you'd like to get further notifications for sessions, and of course, the blog and signing up for my bi-weekly newsletter. And I also have a newsletter on LinkedIn. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your week and afternoon. And remember, there's plenty of time to get neat in. So this is DAOFitlive signing off.